The people you see on screen right now are begging for a miracle. This is the capital of a country claiming nuclear power in the middle of the 21st century, Tehran. Now, this ancient metropolis faces the greatest chaos in its history. People are gathering in the streets, at the edges of dried-up dams, to pray for rain. Why? Because water no longer flows from the taps in their homes, only the sound of air and helplessness. What you see is not a dystopian movie set in the distant future. This is the moment when Iran's capital officially experienced water bankruptcy and civilization collapsed. The Tehran administration raised the white flag in the face of the crisis. When Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian appeared before the cameras last week, there was no anger in his eyes, only cold-blooded resignation. And he uttered those historic words, "We have no other choice." The regime admitted to the world that Tehran is now beyond saving, that the water has run out and the ground has collapsed. So what is the solution? A rescue operation? No. The solution is the greatest escape plan modern history has ever seen. To take the capital from Tehran and move it 1,000 kilometers south into the middle of the desert. This is the only option left for Iran's leaders. And approximately 14 million people are now becoming water refugees. To fully understand the situation, we need to talk about that monster beneath the ground, the technical term that the media dismisses as climate change, land subsidence. What is happening in Tehran is not simply a case of there was less rain this year. Tehran is sinking, not figuratively but physically, geologically, and irreversibly sinking into the ground. Scientific data and satellite analyses by the Center for Strategic and International Studies present us with a terrifying, indisputable fact. Tehran is one of the fastest sinking metropolises in the world. Some parts of the city are sinking into the ground at a rate of 35 centimeters per year. I want you to visualize those 35 centimeters. That is hundreds of times the annual sinking rate of Venice. Imagine a building's foundations sinking 1 meter every 3 years. No concrete, no steel, no engineering marvel can withstand such rapid and unstable ground movement. The hairline cracks you see on the walls of the buildings on your screen right now are actually the building's cries. The cracks that suddenly open up on the sidewalks are the ground's way of saying, "I can't carry you anymore." Scientists call this situation permanent compression. Why permanent? Here lies the most terrifying aspect of the disaster. Underground water reserves act like a sponge for the soil. Water fills the soil's pores and helps it bear the weight of the city above. But what happens when you viciously extract every last drop of that water? The sponge dries out, and it is crushed, compressed, and cemented under the weight of millions of tons of city above. At this point, even if it rained as much as Noah's flood on Tehran, that water could not seep into the ground, because the pores for the water to enter have been wiped out. The soil is dead, having lost its water retention capacity forever. According to a report by Scientific American, the water retention capacity of the Tehran basin has been irreversibly destroyed. If Tehran's collapse were limited to water, it might be manageable. But the city's underbelly has literally turned into a technical minefield. The problem is not the speed of the collapse, but its imbalance. While one street collapses 35 centimeters, the side street collapses 15 centimeters. This difference cuts the steel natural gas pipes underground like scissors. According to CSIS satellite analysis, Tehran is sitting on a giant gas bomb ready to explode at any moment. Metro tunnels are warping, rails are coming off their tracks. This is the real reason President Pezeshkian said, "We cannot continue by adding more population here." The infrastructure has physically collapsed. The regime is currently running a global propaganda campaign telling the world, "Climate change has hit us, we are victims." This is a huge lie. It is not the sun that is drying up Tehran, it is rent-seeking and corruption. Michael Rubin of the American Enterprise Institute very clearly describes the situation in Tehran as a perfect storm of climate change and corruption, hitting the nail right on the head. Companies affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards built hundreds of dams with no scientific basis, just to get billions of dollars in contracts from the state. They cut off the city's lifeline. With tens of thousands of illegal wells, they sucked up and depleted the ancient groundwater reserves like a straw. As ABC News reports from the field, Iran is currently experiencing a full-blown water bankruptcy. Iran spent water it didn't have. It spent the water of future generations. And now the day of reckoning has come. A bankrupt company closes. Its sign is taken down. But what happens to a bankrupt capital city? The answer lies in those long, hopeless queues on the streets of Tehran. Please look carefully at these images on your screen right now. These people are not in a line for free bread. These people are not in a line for luxury electronics. These people are paying a fortune to stand in line to buy a plastic water tank to put on their balcony or in their bathroom. These images, reported by Reuters from the field, are a preview of Day Zero. People know that when they wake up tomorrow morning, not a single drop of water may come out of the tap. No one believes the regime's statements that there is water. Everyone is looking out for themselves. A woman from Tehran speaking to NBC News microphones sums up the situation. The pressure is so low that nothing is flowing. We haven't been able to bathe for days. When the water runs out, the thin veneer of civilization quickly peels away. Hygiene collapses. In Tehran, sewage systems are clogging and backing up due to insufficient water flow. This means medieval diseases like cholera, typhoid, and dysentery are re-emerging among the skyscrapers of the 21st century. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, the horror movie is just beginning. When the water runs out, it's not just the taps that dry up. The law dries up too. And where the law ends, the law of the jungle begins. A new power center is quietly emerging on the streets of Tehran, the water mafia. Reports indicate that the Revolutionary Guards, IRGC, now control not only the dams, but also the water tankers entering the city. Do you know what this means? Water is no longer a public service, but a weapon. While the regime directs water only to loyal neighborhoods, government buildings, and military housing, it is preparing to discipline poor neighborhoods with high protest potential through drought. This is hydro-dictatorship. Today, in the back streets of Tehran, the black market price of a liter of clean water is 10 times the price of a liter of gasoline. A middle-class Iranian spends half their salary just to get clean water for their children. This economic pressure is rotting society from within. Neighbors are stealing water from each other. Apartment managements are keeping watch over water tanks. A culture that once said, "He who sleeps full while his neighbor is hungry is not one of us," has now turned into a survival battle where people say, "If my neighbor has water, I should have it too." Social trust has evaporated like water vapor. The only thing left is paranoia. What was the regime's response to this chaos? A scientific infrastructure reform? No. The answer was, once again, an illusion. Cloud seeding. But thirst is not the only form of death awaiting the people of Tehran. Something much more insidious, much more deadly is filling the void left by the disappearing water. Poison. In the published images, we see Revolutionary Guard planes spraying chemicals into the sky in an attempt to force rain. But atmospheric physics does not obey the mullah's orders. In air with no moisture, these efforts are nothing more than an expensive and unsuccessful charade that serves only to gas the people. When the wetlands and lakes around Tehran dried up, they left behind more than just cracked earth. They left behind a toxic sediment, accumulated over decades of agricultural pesticides, heavy metals, and industrial waste. Now, every time the wind blows, this toxic sediment fills the lungs of 14 million people in the form of salt and dust storms. Doctors in Tehran speak of a mysterious cough epidemic. But it's not mysterious at all. It's the slow suffocation of a city. The city is becoming a biological dead zone. People are not just fleeing thirst, they are fleeing to avoid poisoning, to avoid suffocation. So what is this relocation to the Makran Coast project they propose as a solution for escape? It is a $100 billion fantasy, an illusion. Where will a regime under sanctions, with an empty treasury, find this money? It won't. This project is not to save the people, but to build a sterile, luxurious, and secure bubble in the desert for the regime's elites, commanders, and their families. The remaining 14 million ordinary people, workers, teachers, students, they are left to their fate under the rubble of Tehran. The regime's message to the people is very clear and ruthless. We are saving ourselves. You fend for yourselves. So, what will these millions of people, discarded by the state, do? Will they wait to die in their thirsty homes? No. Human history teaches us that when the water runs out, migration begins. And that migration has already begun. Recent reports published by NCR Iran and images from the field confirmed that a mass movement of water refugees has begun from Tehran to the north to the provinces of Gilan and Mazandaran on the shores of the Caspian Sea. People are renting vehicles with their last money, packing their bags and fleeing north to the only place where there is water and greenery. But that is not a salvation, it is a new conflict zone. Gilan and Mazandaran are already crowded regions with limited resources. The local population has already begun erecting barricades and stoning vehicles in order to protect their land and water from these outsiders arriving from Tehran. Real estate prices have skyrocketed, leaving locals homeless. Iran is being dragged into a war over resources, an internal conflict. This situation could trigger the biggest uprising in Iran in the last 10 years. Because people will now take to the streets not for freedom, but to survive. And there is no police force that can stop a crowd driven mad by hunger and thirst. But the real danger begins when Iran crosses its borders. We must understand this clearly. People do not quietly wait to die of thirst. When water stops flowing from the taps in their homes, when there is no water left in the market, people pack their bags and walk towards where there is water. So where will these 14 million people, abandoned by the state, go? To Makran? No, it doesn't exist yet. To Afghanistan? No, it's chaos. As analysts, satellite data and local sources indicate, a water refugee movement has already begun in northern Iran. People are initially flocking to the Gilan and Mazandaran regions on the Caspian Sea coast. However, these regions are small, crowded, and have limited capacity. Once they are full, this massive crowd will inevitably flow in one direction, westward. That is, Turkey. As highlighted in the Washington Post's analysis, the collapse of agriculture and water scarcity are driving this crowd across the border. As CSIS analyst Will Todman warns, when environmental factors trigger mass displacement, the consequences transcend national borders. The wave of migration coming from Tehran will not resemble previous ones. These are not Afghan shepherds. These are educated, urban, professional, middle-class masses. Doctors, engineers, teachers. In other words, white-collar climate refugees. The collapse of Tehran means a new demographic shock of millions knocking on Turkey's doors. The regime may think it has saved itself by moving the capital, but this trigger it has pulled is a bomb that will destabilize the entire region. And the timer on this bomb will reset when the last drop of water in Tehran runs out. The regime may believe it has saved itself by moving the capital, but the pin it has pulled is a bomb that will destabilize the entire region, reaching as far as Europe. And the timer on this bomb will reset when the last drop of water in Tehran runs out. Tehran's dried-up fountains herald not only the end of water, but the end of an era. The 1979 revolution came with the promise of being the voice of the oppressed. In 2025, it was buried in a cruel silence that condemned its own people to thirst. The regime's Move the Capital project is actually an attempt by a state to carry its own coffin. But no one will attend that funeral, because everyone is fleeing. Nature has imposed the harshest sanction on the Iranian regime. It has taken away the right to life. The range of missiles and the rate of uranium enrichment no longer matter. You can rule a people through fear. You can rule a people through poverty. But you cannot rule a people through thirst. Tehran has fallen. And the dust cloud rising from that rubble is now coming towards us all. We have issued our warning. History records not only those who watch, but also those who fail to take action. Thank you for watching this special broadcast. If you want to hear the voice of truth, subscribe, because at PPR Global, we report not only what is happening, but also what is about to happen. See you soon.